بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone joining me today. Alhamdulillah, it's good to be here. It's good to talk about a topic like this. This is a topic that I know is on a lot of people's minds. It's not only something that we have concerns about, but it's something that we are living through right now. Being a parent myself, and specifically a parent of younger kids. I have two boys. One is 6 years old, and the other is two. I'm not into the trenches of like teenage years yet with my kids, but I'm at the stage where like everything is frightening, and you're concerned about everything in the future, and you want to like do everything you can to make sure that they turn out fine. And especially when you do what I do, and you speak to a lot of people, and you speak to a lot of parents who are very concerned about their kids, and they're concerned about their teenage kids or whatever it may be. It's really easy to get into a place where you're just worried about everything all the time. But as a parent, first and foremost, and yes, Islamic education and counseling is important. But I first relate to this topic as a parent. As a parent, I've had to make some very conscious decisions, and try to educate myself on this topic, because of how concerning it can be. So I'm glad we're talking about this topic. I'm going to try and share some advice, inshallah ta'ala, and try to cover some of the concerns that parents have. I had pre-submitted to me some comments or questions that parents had regarding this topic. So I picked some of the more potent ones, some of the ones that seem to be more common, and I'm just going to address them head on, inshallah ta'ala. But starting off, not only is this a technological age, we're living in a time where we're dealing with a very, very strange environment, and that is COVID, and being quarantined. So that's where we're at right now. So if it wasn't challenging enough to begin with, having to raise our children in an age where technology is just another aspect of life. It's a part of life. I come from a generation where we were introduced to technology, and even though I was exposed to it quite young, but still, I do remember a time where our interaction with technology was mostly just TV. Like the biggest concern people had or parents had when it came to technology and their kids was TV and video games. And then the internet came along, and then from there it was just the ball started rolling really fast. But this is the generation that is dealing with kids being born into technology. And one of the small examples that I share about my kids and my firstborn is that when he was born, I had an Apple Watch. I don't have an Apple Watch anymore. I'm not. It's not really my thing. It didn't work out for me. I don't really like it. But back then, I think that was like when the first Apple Watch came out. And so when my son was born, he was born in a world where his dad was wearing something on his wrist that you can interact with. And so, as he got a little bit older, he would tap the watch and he would swipe and this and that or whatever. And then one day my mother-in-law was holding him, and she was wearing a watch. And his reaction was that he started like tapping and swiping the watch, even though it was a traditional watch. And she's like, what is he doing? What's going on? And I'm like, wow, subhanallah. For him, like his definition of a watch is a type of watch that you can interact with, that you can tap, you can move around. And that's his world. Like that in his world, that is what a watch is. And so for me, that was a one of those moments that this point was really highlighted of the world that this generation is this is the world for them, right? This is where they are. We can talk about the old times or whatever, but that's not the reality for them. This is the world that they're in. And then, if that wasn't challenging enough, if that wasn't new enough, then we were challenged with COVID, and being quarantined, being at home, and having less things to do and less human personal interaction. And so there are new challenges that have come about because of now the COVID world that we're in. And not only that, I also think that because of COVID and being quarantined, some of our older challenges regarding technology have also come to the surface. We've had to now face them. Maybe we weren't really as cognizant, as aware of them before, but now they've kind of come to the surface, and we have to deal with them. So that's where we are right now. That being said, anything happening in the world, anything that we deal with, anything new will come with its challenges, and it will come with its benefits as well. Any new technology, anything that's new, from an Islamic perspective, we, unless it's just outright something which is haram and bad or whatever, uh, and actually, there's very few things in this world, when it comes to like new technology and inventions that, or even in general, there's few things in this world that are purely good or purely evil. Obviously, that which Allah has legislated from salah and so on and so forth, purely good, of course. Things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has defined as being evil, yes, yeah, evil, yes, of course. But when it comes to, these new things that we're dealing with, very rarely, as I said, are these things purely good or purely evil, even though there is a tendency to fall into those extremes. That's just human nature. It's easier to put things into nice, clean, defined boxes and categories, and that's why we live in a world where there's, the right and the left. There's, liberals and conservatives. There's Democrats and Republicans, and there's this and there's that. Because it's just easier to put people in these nice categories, and make all these assumptions about them, and it just fits nice and well in our mind. But the reality is that that's not exactly how the world is. Not everyone. Not We cannot put everyone in, in a nice, clean category and say this is everything about them, and this is, now that we've defined them, this is who they are 100%. Likewise, with everything else, we live in a polarized world, and like I said, there's a tendency to do that. And there are people today who will look at technology and look at the internet and say, oh, those religious people, they just think everything is haram, and look at all the good that comes out of it, and this and that, and so there's no room to even criticize and to evaluate the dangers of the internet and technology. On the other hand, you have those who look at technology and the internet and social media as just purely evil, right? Because there, yes, evil does exist, and as earlier, good does exist as well. They may look at the internet and, social media, whatever, and say it's just all bad, and that may work for some people. There may be some, like there may be a minority of people who can say, you know what, I'm never going to go online, right? I'm never going to have any social media. I'm never going to, I'm not going to own a TV. I'm not going to have any screens in my house, et cetera, et cetera. When some people say that, I'm gonna, like, as a Muslim, as a fellow Muslim, I'll believe you, right? Like, I'll take you at face value, okay? But I do understand, and I know that it is a small minority that can actually truly live like that. The vast majority of us cannot live in that black and white, you know, world, and so we are face to face with the challenges, and at the same time, we can recognize that there is goodness, there are benefits in this technology, and so not only, by the way, not only do we look at the harms, which is important, and it's to stay vigilant, but also we want to look at the good, and sometimes it's the good that can help us overcome or deal with the bad. So the more we highlight the good of technology and what it can do for us, it can quickly become positive and good alternatives for the bad. And I'll clarify a little bit of this as we move forward, inshallah ta'ala. And so, with that being said, look, also we have to understand that, as I said earlier, this is all very new for us, and so there will be a lot of trial and error. There are no clearly fixed answers, and there's no advice that I can say, if you do X, Y, and Z, that's it. Like you'll be able to deal with technology and you'll live a perfectly balanced life. We just because all this is new, we're still learning the true effects of technology on us, and even the benefits. We're still learning about how to benefit ourselves, our lives, even our faith, our iman, our relationship with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. We're learning. We're still learning, and a lot of it is trial and error, right? So we have to try something and see if it works, and then try something else, and that's how it's going to go. And also and also another important point here is that everyone's relationship with technology is not the same. We're all different. Even as adults, we're not all the same. As we have a different relationship with technology. Then of course our children are going to be different, and we can't treat all of our children exactly the same. In their strengths and their weaknesses and their challenges, kids are different, and that's a vital point when it comes to parenting. And even if you're in a teaching space, a teacher has to recognize that not all children are the same. They have different needs, and even the way we teach children, we can't treat every child the same. So all of this starts, if we're trying to deal with this, and we're trying to look for solutions. The first place that we start with is the evaluation process. And so that's step number one. So before we start talking about solutions, before we start talking about alternatives, before we start talking about what do I do, we have to understand where we are. And I say we, not as in we as a society, because I think that's pretty well known. But I mean on an individual level. Where do we stand right now in our relationship with technology? And so we is very personal here. And when I say we, I know you're thinking about your family and your kids, but even before that, when I say we, I mean me, I mean I. So first and foremost, we don't start with our kids. We don't start evaluating our kids. We don't evaluate our spouse. We don't evaluate whatever else, our community and this and that. We evaluate ourselves. What does my relationship with technology look like right now? And some of this is very simple. How much time do I spend online? How often do I look at my phone when I'm having a conversation with my kids? How much time do I spend online doing things that actually help me grow spiritually and in my dunya as well, versus just pure entertainment or pure just passing the time? So that's an evaluation of ourselves. Then we move on to our family and our kids. So first thing, if you're in this part of this evaluation, is even how old are my kids? As I said earlier, every child is different, and the age of a child can make a drastic difference in how ingrained they are in technology, what type of effect technology has had upon them, even the age of the child, and even what we need to do uh, will definitely vary depending on the age of a child. Just to give you an example, we know that kids that are 2 years old and younger, that is an extremely, extremely vulnerable time for kids, because uh, uh, most of a child's brain development happens in the first 2 years of their life. So if there's ever a time that we're going to be the most careful about screen time and what they're exposed to and all of that, those first 2 years are absolutely vital. So part of that evaluation process is what is my kid's age? A 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. The way we work with a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old is not going to be the same as how we would work with a teenager, who has completely different challenges when it comes to the online world, or screen time, or how they entertain themselves online. So breaking that down as well. So this evaluation process, it is about um, being very specific, being very detailed about the effect that technology has on our lives, the good and the bad, by the way, the good and the bad. So I know we immediately think negative, we think about all the bad effects, but even the positive. So we can take a look at our kids' lives and say, what positive effect has technology had on my kids? And sometimes it's, people think there is no positive, effect of technology. I will beg to differ. Maybe not a lot, but if we really think about it, there are ways that our kids do benefit from the technology that is a part of their lives and our lives now. The next step is adapting. We have to learn that we are going to have to adapt. We're going to have to adapt to the new world. Once again, we can look at it as an all or nothing. We can be absolutist about it, but extremism and absolutism doesn't last very long. It's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable way to live. One of the questions that was submitted, or one of the concerns that was submitted, was someone said, "How can I improve family relationships with my children when they're so preoccupied with the digital world?" Okay, so that's one of the concerns that one of the parents had, and in response to that, I would say, how do we adapt, right? So instead of saying, okay, technology is bad, or it's had this effect on my children, how about something like, how do I use the digital world or technology to actually improve family relationships? Right. So, can we use the internet? Can we use technology? Can we use our access to screens to improve a family relationship? I'll give you just two examples, even though I'm sure if y'all if y'all would just think about this for even a few moments, you would come up with plenty of examples. But they have online, like, I'm sure everyone's familiar with board games, right? Board games, for me, I always consider them a positive thing. Obviously, there's better board games and there's worse board games, but talk about, let's just, for the purpose of this discussion today, we'll talk about the better ones, the halal ones, inshallah ta'ala. Board games, you sit and you interact with someone, you're talking, you're interacting, you're playing a game to get together, you're doing something together, you're accomplishing tasks together. Obviously, it's going to build the love and cooperation between you. Unless it's Monopoly, then everybody just hates each other. So, but that's a separate issue. But other than Monopoly, it brings people together. Well, now we can play games with people who are not in the same household as us, and I'm talking about like board game style games where you have family, and like I have family, for example, in Texas, right, very far away. My nephews are in Texas. I can get online, set a time where my kids get online. My nephews and nieces get online, and we're all on our phones, right? But we're interacting and we're playing a game together. And we can even have a screen open where we can, FaceTime and see each other, and real time interaction. And to me, obviously, it's not the same as being with them. But when you're quarantined and you're separated by distance and you can't be with them, does that not build family relations? And does that not build love? And if we're talking about in our own household, I'll just give you one personal example. One of the things I did when my kid, my older son, who's 6 years old, he wanted to go. He wanted to make a card for my wife, for his mom, and he knows that I'm on my computer a lot, and sometimes when I'm on my computer, I'm doing design work because my secular education is in design, and I enjoy design and even fashion design. I have my own clothing line, all that. So there's time that I'm spending online or on my computer designing. And so I said to him, I said, "Hey, would you want to design a card for mom?" And he said, "What does that mean?" I said, "Well, put your crayons aside, put your color pencils aside. Let's get on Photoshop and let's see what we can do, what we can come up with." And that was the most exciting thing for him. And I sat down with him, and we started moving text around, adding colors, adding shapes, and I showed him all the stuff that we could do on Photoshop that we couldn't, really couldn't do with a crayon or something. Even though that has its own beauty. Obviously, like hand drawn, handmade stuff is beautiful on its own. It's not to replace that, but it's just this new world that opened up for him, and I got to spend time with him designing something, and that was beautiful. Alhamdulillah, I enjoyed it. He enjoyed it. We spent time together. Yeah, we were online. We were on the computer. We're staring at a screen, but we are now improving our family relations with the use of this technology. So once again, it's about adapting and really being creative with what we have, what is available to us. So instead of just looking at the negative and just looking at the ways that it may be destroying or hurting family relationships, there are ways that we can come up with that can help us build and strengthen our family relationships. So adapting, is part of the process. It's about, making changes, making changes to, if we evaluated ourselves, the next step, is we're willing to adapt. We said, how do we adapt? How do we change? Well, we can't just say things like, oh, even what I mentioned, using technology to improve family relationships. That's a great sentiment, but what does that actually realistically look like? Well, in order for that to happen, we have to start setting goals, realistic, progressive goals, consistent, actionable goals, actionable changes that we want to make. What does that look like? Well, some of you may have seen this before, but there's an acronym for the type of goals we should set. It's called SMART goals, or smarter goals. And you have it here on your slide. But what do we mean when we say SMART or smarter goals? Well, number one, it should be a specific goal. It shouldn't be something just generic or vague, right? So an example, a goal that is not specific is I want to improve family relationships, or the family relations by using technology. Okay, that's cool. That's not specific at all, right? It's way too general. It's way too broad. A very specific goal. We want it to be. We want the goal to be measurable, right? How do you measure the progress that you've made? For example, a person sets a goal where they say, let's go back to what I said, playing a game, playing a game with our family members who are across the country. So I want to, so it's not, yeah, I want to improve family relationships, but I want to do it. The specific goal is once a week for an hour a week. We're going to call everybody up and we're going to set it up and we're going to spend an hour together, us and our cousins and whatever, the kids, everybody. And we're going to play for an hour to improve family relationships. Okay, that's a specific goal. Is it measurable? Yeah. You can say, did we do it this week or not? Very simple. This week, we spent that hour with our family. Number three, achievable or attainable. If it has to be something that is realistic. If you say I'm going to spend 10 hours a week, speaking to my family online, for some people that may be achievable, but I can tell you, like, on a personal level, it's not an achievable, realistic, attainable goal. So the goal has to be something which is attainable as well. So maybe an hour a week. A person may say an hour a week is too much for me. I don't have time for that. Okay, half an hour a week, is that doable? Is that achievable for you? Say yes, it's achievable. Okay, it meets this requirement. Time bound, right? So we don't want something that is just open-ended. So you say, for the rest of my life, I'm going to spend an hour a week playing a game online with my family. Well, there's no limit. There's no end to that time. It's going to be harder to achieve that goal. How about we start off by saying for a month? Okay, so as inshallah, hopefully we're getting out of COVID, and until, let's say, we're looking forward to summer break, until summer break. Okay, so we're talking about April, May, maybe 2 months, right? For the next 2 months, every Sunday or every Saturday from this time to this time, we're gonna meet online as a family and we're gonna spend time together. Now that is time bound. And then, so that's a SMART goal, and some people add to that exciting. It should be something that excites you. If it's something which is boring, something that's not exciting, we're less likely to accomplish that goal. And also slightly unrealistic, which is kind of part of being exciting. You want it to be challenging as well. If it's too easy, we may give up on it, right? So if somebody sets a goal that is not exciting, it's just an easy thing to, there isn't a challenge involved in it, then we may not stay motivated. So we want the goal to be difficult enough to the point where we don't lose hope. It's too difficult, but difficult enough that it keeps us motivated. So those are the types of goals that we need to start setting for ourselves. And what are what those specific goals are will depend on our evaluation that we have made for ourselves. One of the things that I want to share with you, if you're looking for specific goals, um, and all of these, what I'm about to say right now, is can be adapted to become a smart or a smarter goal. So if you're looking for a specific goal or specific goals when it comes to screen time, the American Academy of Pediatrics created some guidelines for parents when it comes to screen time. Right. So this is like a national set of guidelines that if you don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, you don't know how much screen time is too much or too less. And mind you, I did say everyone is different, every child is different. So this is not like wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not revelation that is this or nothing, right? This is not, keep that in mind. This is a recommendation. If you don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, this is a good guideline. So just keep that in mind, inshallah ta'ala. But what did they recommend? Well, when it comes to children younger than the age of 18 months, um, they should not have any screen time. And I know a lot of parents are like, what is that? That's crazy. That's insane. That's unrealistic. Understood. I get it. But this is something that we should at least try our best to get close to, as close as we can get, as close as we can get to this goal, inshallah ta'ala, right? But the point is to minimize. This goes back to what I was saying about, the how at the first 2 years, the child's, the development of the brain, it's heavily affected by screens, and there's so many studies on how it affects children, and it affects their ability to pay attention, their ability to stay focused, so on and so forth. There's a lot of studies out there of how detrimental screens can be for children. Look, at that age, especially those first 2 years, children are learning about interaction. They're learning new things, and they can learn new things either through us, through human beings, through talking to human beings, or they can learn them by these flashing images that are in front of them. The problem is that sometimes kids get desensitized, and in order to feel entertained, they need those flashing images. So our kid is bored, we hand them a screen. Well, their brain gets rewired. It gets rewired to only feel like they're being entertained when they see these bright colors, flashing images, pumping music. And even if you look at the music that they have for kids, and pastime, Baby Shark, insanity. Like Baby Shark is, I heard someone say, like, they could play that in a club and people will start dancing. Like, it's just so like intense. But that intensity, it's made for kids to keep them entertained, to keep them motivated. The problem is when they get used to that, it's no longer interesting to them to sit in front of their parent and their parent try to talk to them, or to read a book. I mean, our generation, especially this generation, is having a tough time with books, because compared to screens and cartoons and animations and things like that, a book is boring because people, they're not moving, they're not talking, they're not doing anything. You want me to just look at these pictures? The pictures aren't exciting enough, right? So we don't want that. We don't want to have that effect on our children, because it does affect their schooling as well. When they have no choice but to read, right? At some point in school, they're gonna have to read. They're gonna have to do stuff that is boring. I heard someone say that we were actually blessed, like my generation, the generation before mine, we were blessed um, to be bored, because that actually taught us so much. Uh, if you all remember, some of the parents in the house, if you ever went on a car trip, a long car ride, we didn't have any screens, we didn't have any tablets, phones, nothing. We're talking about an 8-hour drive. You have no choice but to look out, right? You need to look at Allah's creation. You had no choice but to interact with your siblings. You had no choice but to come up with games. You had no choice. Like we learned to appreciate the small things because we were bored. And I remember saying to my parents, like, I'm bored. And then my parents would say, okay, what do you want me to do? Like, there's nothing you can do, right? There were no options. Now children, like, I'm bored. Okay, khalas, here's a tablet, here's a phone, here's that. And so, like, once again, adapting, right? So slowly making those changes where one of the rules I set for my car, the rule in my car is I tell my kids, I mean, my younger one's 2, so he doesn't care about this stuff. My older one is 6. No screens in the car. And then he'll say, but it's boring. I'll say, Alhamdulillah. Say Alhamdulillah that you're bored. Look outside, look at all this stuff. And subhanAllah, it's just a matter of paying attention. There's so much information out there, especially for the younger kids. An 18-month old, or a 1-year old or a 2-year old. Those bright lights and the traffic lights and the cars and the trees and everything that's happening, right? That's all new information for them, right? And even us talking to the child and having a conversation with them, that is stuff that they absolutely need. So 18 months under less than under the age of 18 months, ideally, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, there should be no screen time. The exception that they make is something like video chatting, because there's like human interaction there. You're interacting with someone, they're talking to you. From the ages of 18 months to 24 months, uh, they say introduce digital media by watching quality programming, right? So educational programming, things like, I don't know, it depends. There's different stuff out there, but a well-known example would be like things in the line or in the vein of Sesame Street, meaning they're learning numbers, they're learning letters, it's educational, and so that type of programming. And obviously now we have so many Islamic alternatives as well. There's Islamic educational shows for kids and all that. So that's the age where we start introducing that. Ages 2 to 5, 1 hour per day, and it should be, once again, quality programming where they're actually learning something. It's not just like mindless forms of entertainment. Ages 6 and up, limit media use and device type, and ensure media use does not interfere with sleep or physical activity. So setting goals for kids. For my son, my older one, my 6-year-old, we have a time limits on how much screen time is allowed, and obviously I do my best to keep track of what he's watching. I do understand that there has to be a level of entertainment in it, but also if he can learn something in the process, that'll be good as well. Now that he has started school, I try my best to implement a no screen time during the week, and on the weekends he can have some screen time, not just open. But it doesn't always work, by the way, being quarantined and so on and so forth. There are days where I'll be like, okay, fine, you can, yeah, you can have some screen time, but at least that's something that I aim for. So adapting something like this into the smart or smarter goals is where we want to be headed, inshallah ta'ala. So one of the other concerns, and we can go to the next slide here. One of the other concerns that I saw and I hear from a lot of parents is I can't always monitor what my child is watching on the computer. And this question was asked in many different forms. Some people said, how can we monitor the technology if we ourselves don't understand the technology fully? Some people, and this is a source of a lot of anxiety for parents, where they're like, look, technology is changing so fast, and obviously this depends on the age of your child as well. But technology is advancing and changing so fast, and like, how do we monitor our kids? How do we keep track of our kids if we don't even understand what they're doing? Um, First of all, I will say, and it's maybe a hard pill to swallow, but I will say that we have to come to terms with the fact that sooner or later your kids will know more than you. That's just a reality that we have to accept. There's no going around it, right? As smart as we are, and as much as we know, and as much as no matter how young your kids are, and it may be true to a certain age that you got control. And my kids are still at an age where I'm like, hey man, I know exactly what you're doing, and I know what you did, and this and that, whatever. But I know that time is coming where there's things I won't understand, or he'll be able to do things that they're just beyond me. Even though I think I'm pretty much, I'm in touch with what's going on in advancements in technology and so on and so forth. But the reality is that there will come a time, if it's not already here for a lot of parents, it's already here. The time where we can't really, if we don't understand it, how are we going to monitor them? So this is where a very important principle, very important parenting motto needs to be understood and lived. And that is that it is imperative that we teach our kids correct principles and morals. We give them the correct tarbiyah, we give them the correct upbringing. We teach them right from wrong. We teach them Islamic morals. We teach them about ethics. We teach them what Allah has made haram and what Allah has made halal, and we educate them. And I'm going to get to this in a bit, but I'm going to say it right now as well, through leading by example, right? So we have to live that life, but I'll get to that. But teaching them principles and morals, because that is really the only thing that can stay with them. You physically cannot always stay with them, right? Maybe at a young age you can stay with them. If they're a 2, 3, 4-year old, what happens when they start going to school? What happens when they get older? What happens when they start making friends? You can't control their environment 100%. And people who try to do that go insane, right? They go insane because they try to control every aspect of their children's lives, and especially when their kids become teenagers, and the temptations and the trials become more severe, and the kids become more vulnerable. And if our strategy is, I'm going to control everything, and I'm going to monitor everything, and I'm going to watch everything, I'm letting you know right now, it is not going to work. Oftentimes by doing that, we push our kids away even more. Instead of bringing them in, we push them away even more. So what do? Well, we teach them right from wrong. We give them the tarbiyah, we give them a proper upbringing. We teach them the Quran, we teach them the Sunnah, we teach them what is good and what is bad. And then there has to come a time where we trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where we put our tawakkul in Allah, that Allah will take care of them, and that indeed, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You don't guide the people whom you love. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Rather, it is Allah who guides whomever He wills. Meaning, you cannot force someone or make someone be guided. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the Prophet ﷺ in charge of delivering the message, showing them the guidance. إِنَّكَ لَتَهْدِي إِلَى صِرَاطِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Allah told Prophet ﷺ, you guide to the straight path. Meaning you show them the straight path, you teach them the straight path, but their hearts, they're not for you to guide, and likewise they're not for us to control. We cannot control their hearts. We cannot decide where our children will end up, whether they will be guided or not. We have examples in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, his own uncle. The Prophet ﷺ was not able to bring him to Islam. We have other prophets, Nuh alayhi salam, whose own son. We have so many examples, right? May Allah protect us and protect our children, but that is a reality that we have to live with. So we do our part. We do our part in doing our best. And I'm going to get to this later on, but we have to do our best. We try our best, and then part of our tawakkul is we take the means that Allah has given to us, and then we rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that trust in Allah has to be there. That has to be part of the process. So when it comes to younger kids, and what do, right? There has to be certain things that are, well, I would say 3 categories. Number one, when we're teaching them morals and principles, and we're setting rules for them, and there has to be certain absolute no-nos, like a red lines that we do not cross. That has to be very clear. Then there has to be things that we discourage, right? Things that are not so good, we discourage, we try our best. And then the third category, things that we try to avoid. The problem that a lot of parents have is they do not distinguish between 1, 2, and 3. And you can think of it as haram, makruh, and mubah. right? That there are things that are haram. Absolutely, they are prohibited. They're wrong. A person is sinful if they indulge in it or if they take part in it. Then there are things which are makruh. They are discouraged. That we are rewarded for leaving those things. And there are things that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has made permissible. They're mubah. And if we indulge in the mubah too much, it can take us away from that which Allah has made good for us. So spending too much time on the mubah, on the permissible matters, is also can be bad. But the problem is, as I said, when parents treat everything exactly the same, everything is no, 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 no. You can't do this, and 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 they don't distinguish. And so for the child, there comes a time where they don't understand the seriousness of certain matters. I often think about kids who yell at their parents for everything. If we yell at our kids for everything, then everything is going to have the same importance for them. If we reserve yelling, right, and yelling, by the way, in Islam, or raising our voice, I should say, it has to be done with the intent and the purpose of bringing about positive change. It should never be done just to relieve our own frustration, because a lot of times when we yell and when we scream, we're not doing it for the child, because we know in the back of our mind, a lot of times we know yelling at the child is not going to change their behavior. It's just going to make them more frightened, or just sometimes we yell at our child to cry. They're crying. We say, "Stop yelling," and they cry even more because they're afraid of the yelling. So we yell because we want to get our own frustration out, right? That's not the purpose of raising our voice or yelling. It's to show so yelling or raising our voice or being stern, it should be reserved to show our child that this is a serious matter, right? That this is something we do not cross, right? And then, there are matters that are less serious. Yes, we are stern, but not as stern. And then there are things that we are a little bit more lax in. Our kids need to understand the difference between those three. Otherwise, we may lose all of them, right? And once again, I'll give you another example of yelling. A parent who's always yelling at their child, "Don't do this," or they say, "Come downstairs for dinner right now," and they're always yelling. And la qaddar Allah, the child is playing in a field, or they're playing in a park, and the park is right next to a main road, and a car is coming by, and the child goes on the road accidentally, and the parent says, "Come back, wait, watch out." If the child is always used to hearing yelling, they're not going to care much, right? May Allah protect us and protect our children, because they've always heard yelling, so now they're desensitized to yelling, right? So now, subhanallah, that yelling has that seriousness to their child. It doesn't do anything for them. So likewise, when we are teaching our children these principles and these morals, we have to be able to differentiate for them that there are certain things that are indeed, they are very, very serious. We don't cross that line, right? These are absolutely things that we don't cross. And then there, as I said, step 2 and step 3. Now, regarding everything that I've just said, we have to lead by example. If we don't do it ourselves, we cannot expect our kids to do it either. And that's why when I talked about evaluation, we evaluate ourselves first and foremost. This is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all of the prophets. They always led by example. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. There is for you in the Messenger of Allah a prime example, right? This is why Allah sent prophets and messengers, so that we could imitate them, so that we could follow them. And this is one of the reasons why Allah sent human beings as prophets and messengers. The Quraysh, one of the problems they had, one of the issues that they brought up with the Prophet ﷺ is they said, why didn't Allah send angels? If Allah is going to send a messenger, why didn't Allah send angels? Why did Allah send a human being, right? But one of the reasons for that, one of the wisdoms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is so that we have an example and a model that is the best of us, but still a human being. So we know we can strive to be like that, right? And this is why the prophets, they led by example. We want to tell our kids, we got to cut down the screen time. We got to cut down the screen time. We want to tell our kids, listen, no phone at the dinner table. We got to be the ones that say no phone at the dinner table. We want to tell our kids, hey, you spend too much time doing this. we have to lead by example, otherwise it's not going to work. Kids, especially at a younger age, they don't really hear what we say, but they learn from what we do. They imitate. They imitate even mannerisms. Subhanallah, there's videos on YouTube, and I'm not encouraging you to go on YouTube, where like 3-year-old, there's a 3-year-old talking like a grown adult, and people are like laughing. And they're like, "Wow, that's so funny." It's not it shouldn't be surprising, because kids at an age, they imitate their parents. They even talk, even the mannerisms, they even behave. Sometimes we find it very amusing when a child does something an adult would do, or says a statement that an adult would say. It's very amusing for us as children, because it's weird to see somebody in a small body saying something that an adult would say, but the reality is that's how they learn, right? So it has to start with us. Um, the next thing I'm going to cover, and I'm almost done here, inshallah ta'ala, but the concern that people have when they say, I don't have time, right? I don't have time. That is a reality. And once again, this is one of those issues where I will say, there is no magical answer to this, that we can solve this problem. We have to try our best. And the best is different for everyone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Have the taqwa of Allah to the best of your ability. Do as much as you can, right? Um, the life of, for example, a single mother who's working 2 jobs to support her children uh, is very different than someone who lives a more well-off life, and they work they work online from home, and they have, so to that person we would say, you have time, like, you got to make time. And to the other person we would say, yeah, it's difficult. Can we look at some places that we can look for some positive areas, or where we can fit in something? But their life is very different. We cannot judge them by the same scale. So I hear you. Like I said, when parents say, I'm so busy that I don't have time to monitor my kids, I don't have time to watch them. Once again, um, quality is paramount. So the time that you do have with your kids, make sure that it's the best possible time. Don't waste that time. So if you're short of time, if we're short on time, don't let the time that we do have, we cannot let it be time that we're not building something and developing something with our kids. That we have to make sure that it is actually quality time. Post-COVID, and I'll end with this, inshallah ta'ala. Post-COVID is going to be a time for reevaluation, um, because of all the changes that we went through. Our habits are changing, and some of our habits have changed. How we, how even, how kids are being educated, and learning online, and all of that. What I would say is that it is very important that, just as right now, inshallah ta'ala, after this discussion, we're all going to take some time to evaluate our lives, and make, realistic, smarter goals, and smarter choices, and smarter changes in our lives. Likewise, post COVID, we're going to have to sit down and say, well, what does the world look like right now, and how do we now make those changes that will help us benefit from technology, and keep us away from, or protect us from the harms or potential harms of technology, and being online, and the online in the online world. And once again, I'll say this again, it is going to be trial and error, right? So we cannot expect that everything you do is going to work 100% the first time. Number one, it's probably not going to work the first time. Number two, it's not going to work 100%. That's the reality of who we are. There is no perfection in these matters. There is no perfection in actually parenting, subhanallah. In the end of the day, we are human beings, and we are limited, and so we have to try our best. We have to try our best, and leave the rest upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Prophet sallam, he said, "I'qilha wa tawakkal." He said, tie your camel and have tawakkul. We take the means, right? We do our best, tie our camel in the best way possible, but we have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we have to be willing to listen, to learn, and to make changes, as I said, first and foremost, for ourselves, but it will take time and it will take patience. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for us and guide us to that which is beloved and pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for ourselves and for our children and for our communities. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa jazakum Allahu khaira.